Welcome to the Draftstars AFL show with Smatho and Roody.
With thanks to Draftstars, Australia's number one AFL Daily Fantasy platform, along with Daily Fantasy Rankings, your number one resource for AFL Daily Fantasy. Welcome to round 6 of the Draftstars AFL show with myself, Smatho, and that's Roody there from DFR. We're here to talk about the Giants and the Saints for Friday night. None of this Thursday night business anymore. Me and Roody are now on Thursday nights for Friday night footy. Roody's back for more DFX action. How are you tonight, Roody?
Yeah, I'm doing well, Smatho, doing well. Just lapping up the last few days of school holidays, trying to keep the kids busy and trying to do some research to keep the viewers happy as well, Smatho.
It's good to hear that you can make some time for us. I know you're an extremely busy man and obviously doing a great job behind the scenes, but you guys obviously going to do a great job tonight with us here on the stream. If you've got any questions or queries throughout the live stream tonight, chop them in your comment box or in the chat there. We'll be able to get throughout the show. If you're listening the replay via podcast or from the video, make sure you give us a like and subscribe to the Daily Fantasy Rankings YouTube channel, etc. for that. So we're up to round 6. The live finals, Roody, have been very, very popular here at Draftstars. We've been actually quite chuffed at how many tickets have been dished out so far. We're up to 30 odd. We're already out and about to winners already, just through 2 rounds. So we might have to just pull a little handbrake for the next few rounds just to make sure that everyone gets a chance as we come up. But let me show you who are last week's winner here, Roody, including Donkey Zane got the 2. He got 2 separate little contests, so he's in there to go. Jason Miggs, Barbs, DXT, 001. Praise the Lord. He's in. D-Win, Paddy Mac, 83. Gift got his second ticket. Luray, 88. Invincible, who's also got his second ticket. Steve KU, 238. Dino, 29. And then our favourites here. I love Lamp, Macquarie Guy. DFR's only Macquarie Guy. Well done, Tom, mate. You're in. Sunke, AFL 2020 AFL
20?
Live Final Champion, 20. Yep, 20. And then Gatsid, who also was a place getter a couple of years ago. So they've got their golden tickets for the AFL Live Final. $500,000 prize pool. As I said, we're up to 30-odd tickets already. 210 is the total. So it's a long journey. But this will creep up pretty quick there already. So make sure that you look for the qualifiers in the Draftstars lobby. Make sure you do gamble responsibly at all times. 18 plus only. But more golden tickets are up for grabs this week, including tomorrow night's matchup, which is the $90,000 Giants versus St. Prize pool. 7:50 p.m. start at Manuka Oval. The weather's not too bad there in Canberra tomorrow. Nice clear conditions. Might be a little bit chilly coming this time of year. Just under $8,000 for first prize here tomorrow here, Rudy. Let me bring up the changes from the teams via the AFL website. Obviously, the Giants have some significant changes coming in this week. So Braden Pruce, well suspended last week, straight back in. Toby Green, was suspended for a long time. He's back in. And then Isaac Cumming also is another good addition for the Giants here. They lose Jesse Hogan, they lose Matt DeBoer and Xavier O'Halloran. Whereas for the Saints, there's no spot for Jared Leinhart. Pretty much like a matchup kind of selection. He's got no one really to play with. So Jimmy Webster is in for the Saints. No Paddy Ryder, I guess. That's probably one of my first questions I will ask for you shortly, because obviously he was out, but he's still not back in the side. So, Rudy, what do you reckon of these changes for the team so far?
Yeah, some interesting changes for the Giants first. They're 3 really good inclusions. Bruce is clearly the number 1 ruck, and he, a bit silly a couple of weeks ago getting rubbed out and come straight back in. Interestingly, Flynn keeps his place, so they'll go for the double ruck setup, which they have done previously. Flynn will stay mainly in the forward line, give a bit of ruck relief. So don't be too scared about playing Bruce as your number 1 ruck. He should still take 70-75% of hitouts with Flynn staying forward. And also don't forget that with Hogan out, and really Himmelberg is their only other key forward. So we might see some odd things happen in the forward line with the Giants tomorrow night. Maybe Lockie Keith for example, goes down forward for a bit. I mean, that doesn't exactly fill me with confidence if I'm a Giants supporter. But yeah, so Flynn, I think, will play largely as a forward. Of course, Toby Green, shout out to Wesley College down here in Melbourne, former student of mine, taught him geography in year 10. And let's just say that he's a much, much better footy player than he was a geography student. So Toby Green, look, he's a superstar, isn't he? And really, towards the back half of last year, we all knew he was an amazing player, but he really brought them home. And he's probably the best medium forward in the competition. I think that's easily backed up. So yeah, he'll come in and have a lot to prove, obviously, with his really, really silly suspension last year and coming. Saw big things from him towards the second half of last year as well, and across that halfback flank. And that also could have some implications on people like Whitfield, Ash, and also some other few Perryman and those kind of hybrid flankers that they've got. So just I'm a little bit worried about that, Smatho, a little bit uncertain about some roles, but we'll get into that later on. For St Kilda, the changes, still no Paddy Ryder. Why risk him? I think they're taking a very conservative approach with Ryder. Saints are doing really well. They haven't really beaten any contenders yet, apart from Fremantle. They lost to Collingwood in round 1, had that massive win against Hawthorn. Suns that they've beaten as well. Can we really trust them yet, Smatho? I think that's the big question we're going to get tomorrow night, and we should have a pretty good answer to that question. And the Giants, there's a lot on the table for them as well. They really need to start turning their season around. They're 1-5, is it? 1-5?
Yeah, it's 1-5, yeah.
1-5, which is not a great start. I mean, I don't want to go too much off the topic here, mate, but this is a really talented team that they've got, and they just can't get the best out of these players at one time. So, yeah, danger signs for Giants if they can't get up. Jimmy Webster coming back in. Like you said, Lena, that's a matchup thing because they simply don't have the key forwards that need to mind. So I'm looking at Saints halfback flankers and medium back defenders to absolutely rack it up tomorrow night.
All right, so a couple of things here. Obviously, JT says hello. So shout out to the map. I think he refers him to himself as it. And then obviously yourself talking about your geography pursuits. There's no need for that in this particular podcast. I know it's great that Toby Green had the tutelage of yourself, but there's no need for that self-indulgent behaviour there. So
I apologise. Yeah, it's not the GeoGuessr podcast. That's the next one, isn't it, mate?
Yeah, it's come up tomorrow morning. Yeah. Anyway, we are indulging in our own self-pity, but one thing you will need to look at, though, is dailyfantasyrankings.com.au. So whenever you reference the tools, the cheat sheets and that, they're available on dailyfantasyrankings.com.au. Points against, cheat sheets, ruck analysis, CB8s, it's all there. It's all for free. So make sure you get the dailyfantasyrankings.com.au. Hit the data tools button there, click on the AFL icon, and you'll be preparing your DFS teams in no time at all. All right, Roody, you've had a lot of information ready to go for us. So let's bring up the lobby. Rux, earlier today I prepared a rider spill and, just teaming up with Marshall against, obviously, Bruce, and then, obviously, he didn't get selected, and then they've kept Matty Flynn. So Matty Flynn's there at 9,620. Bruce is there at 11,090. You said you're not really worried about Flynn's inclusion with Bruce. Bruce is going to be the number one role there, but can you if you're going to flip a coin in terms of if I'm going to play only one or two lineups, would you play Bruce over Flynn?
Look, I think you can actually argue a case for all four ruckmen in some weird way. I know that sounds odd. In the beginning of the week when the contest first came out, I was like, I'm going to be 100% Bruce, I think the value is there still at 11K. The role is there. We know he loves to tackle. He does give away a lot of free kicks, so just be wary of that. It can be the difference in some ways, like, 3 or 4 free kicks against. That's, 9 to 12 points that he's going to miss out on, and that can be the difference. So, but just I'll do a really quick summary. Marshall, clearly the ceiling play in the rucks. but he has been down on form in the beginning of the year, even with like Hayes just isn't rucking that much. Marshall really is taking the majority of the hit outs and the centre bounces, but he just hasn't been able to capitalise on the scores. And maybe that's because he's not maybe kicking as many goals as he did last year as well, with Max King being so dominant down forward this year. So Marshall's a ceiling play, but will attract ownership because of his dual position as well. Actually, does he still have dual position there? Yeah, he does. Yep. Bruce, we know what we're going to get. We're going to get 30-odd hit-outs, 10 to 12 possessions, and 4 or 5 tackles. So that gets him to about the 90 mark. As 80 is almost a floor for Bruce, isn't it? And then we've got the two part-timers in Flynn. I suppose you could say that he could get 15 to 20 hit-outs and a couple of goals and be okay. But, yeah, I think GPP flyer only for Flynn and Hayes, pretty much the same for me as well. Does need to kick a couple of goals to get anywhere near that 9 to 10x value that we really want. So for just a couple of grand more, you can lock in Bruce, which I think is what most people will do this week, Smatho.
Yep, I think that you've nailed that. I reckon most people go to Bruce, and if they want to play Marshall, they'll play him up forward. All right, let's have a look at defense. Now, I'll see the DFR tools here on Daily Fantasy Rankings, suggest that Giants backs could be the play here because the Saints are actually leaking fantasy points. I think they're like number 1 or number 2 in that particular position. But also, you can't discount the form of Jack Sinclair. They're all the way up there at 14,330. That wasn't a player at the start of the year thinking that he's going to be an uber premium defender. But look at those scores there. 97 last week, 113, nothing under 93, 14,330. We know that the Giants are a little bit thin out down back. So is this going to be a bit of a field day for old Jackie Sinclair?
Well, the important thing for Jack Sinclair is that he's not just playing as a defender. He's really made a move into the midfield this year, as opposed to last year where he spent most of his time off the flank. He's still lining up on the flank, but definitely he's like kind of that fourth mid-in the absence of Jack Billings and Zach Jones, who has a Rona now. So Sinclair, don't forget, you see 14 for Sinclair and you're like, what? That's pretty crazy. But when you consider that he is basically a midfielder now, it's not so crazy to imagine. So, yeah, you need to have some Sinclair in your pool, that's for sure. And I think maybe his price could just drag his ownership down a little bit this week as well. And then you've got the former premium play of Lachie Whitfield, who has been super consistent with, 90s and 100s. I think there's definitely an argument to play him. I'm not scared about the inclusion of Cummings. I think that, Whitfield probably even benefits from that. He can play a bit looser, which he does love to do. So that's basically the top 4-5 plays. Cumming, I'll probably be a little bit lower than the field on Cumming. Just first game back from a little layoff might be something there, but I think there's a case to be made for everyone down to Josh Battle. Now, Battle is the one that I was saying before the show, listeners, that I can never get on the right side of Battle. Whenever I pick him, he spuds it up. But if you think that the Saints are going to win easy, Battle will have a relatively easy night matchup-wise. Okay, so I think that he can have one of those massive, switch kick +6 mark games, and 100 really is on the cards for Battle tonight. And my favourite correlation play would be Battle with Brad Hill. Now, I know that Hill is playing a bit of a different role in recent weeks with the Saints. He's not that traditional flanker wing role that he has played previously. He's sneaking up to the half-forward line. But it's the game script correlation that I'm thinking about here of a really loose, open game that the Saints will really try to put their mark on. I think St Kilda took the pedal off against the Suns last week. They really hammered Hawthorn. If you look at that Hawthorn game, they did not stop. And then last week against the Suns, they got in front, did what they needed to do, banked the win, and then took the foot off in the last quarter. So I think that if things open up, it'll be more like the Hawthorn game this week, and there'll be some easy fantasy points. And Brad Hill does love to junk it up in a soft encounter.
Let's have a look at these cheaper options. Obviously, Lockie Ash with no Matt DeBoer. Is he tagging this week? Obviously there are options for the Saints there to tag. Does fantasy points obviously on 86 last week, but 47 the week before when he was doing the dual tagging 2 weeks before. So 9,900 seems to be a bit of a sticky price for Lockie Ash here.
Yeah, which is, I mean, we like sticky points in DFS sometimes because it's where people get scared to make those plays. So Lockie Ash has been playing that tagging role, which is annoying me in one of my season-long comps because I had him on the wing. Anyway, come on, Lockie, get back to that flank, please. So the tagging role on Jack Steele would also scare people off. So I suppose you can make a leverage play and an argument to play him there. 10K isn't too bad a price for him. Haynes is someone who used to be just like a fantasy pick. But I suppose you can only really play him if you think that the Giants are gonna win, which I don't think they will. And then coming down a little bit, Wilkie really has been hitting his ceiling, which is that, high 70s to 80s. So, you could get a bit funky and give him a run. Jimmy Webster, that kind of same thing. Like, you could play him for a bit of point of difference, but really your ceiling, just, you're not gaining that much. So if you're playing, let's just stop for a second. If you're going for Wilkie or Webster, right, and you're looking to leverage off of Hill, Battle, Cumming, those guys, your opportunity cost you're not gaining enough, from that 2K that you save. You're not going to get the points that those other guys could get over the 70 that Wilkie's going to get you. So just be careful of that. But Smatho, mate, below that, I can't get inspired by many of these sub 9K plays. What about you?
No, none of them are averaging over 50. Maybe Ben Patton, who's shown glimpses of 60s and 70s there at 8,180. That will probably attract attention. But the players like Dougal Howe, Lockie, Keefe, Jake Stein, they're all key defenders. They're not looking for the ball; they're just punching balls. So, and when you punch a ball, that gives you 0 fantasy points. So, one to keep in mind. Obviously, as I said earlier, the data tool suggests that Giants might get a few cheap points at the back, but Saints in a good win seems to be a really, really good play as well. All right, let's move on to midfield. So Jack Steele, his price has actually been coming down a little bit since the start of the year. He was around that high 17, 18 mark. He's now down to 16,590. Tim Taranto is around $800 cheaper there at 15,720, along with Crouch at 15,300. Tom Green, who's been playing pretty well at 14,900. And then that drops down to Tom Kelly at 13,800. So let's just look at this top 4 at the start here because
Tom Kelly getting a bit of DFR on the brain.
Tom Green, Josh Kelly. So the point I was just about to make here, Rudy, is that, if you start scrolling down, we still got players there in that high 10, 11, 12K bracket. So we've got here 4, 8, 10, 11 players over 10K. And obviously you can't just be jamming.
Mid-price madness tonight, Smatho. Mid-price madness.
Yes. So I was going to suggest if you're going to play one of the top 4, you can only play one because you have to start playing mid-price madness for the rest of your side.
Yeah, it's it's a tough midfield to crack. I think it's going to be a night that favours the multi-entry guys, just because on a slate like this, you can run through your scenarios. All right, so let's say that you have Lockie Ash tagging Jack Steele. Okay, so then for me that brings Brad Crouch into play. I think Crouch has been overlooked in most slates that I've played that he's featured in. I've given him a run the last 3 weeks or so, and he's done really well. 15 though is getting up there. We really do need to see a ceiling game, which is that 30 possessions, 7 to 10 tackles, kind of stuff from Crouch, which we know he's capable of. And if they're focused on Steele, then he's definitely a chance of doing that. I think the most popular play will be Seb Ross, who, again, with the absence of Zach Jones and a couple of the other regular midfield rotation types, Ross will be really popular, as he has been the last couple of slates. And then the other guy who might get a bit of ownership of his performance last week is Daniel McKenzie, which at 9.5 might get a bit of ownership. But going back up to those top guys, for me, my order of preference would be I'm going to look to play lower than Field on Steele, because I think he will get tagged. Taranto's price is getting a little bit too high for me with his upside. So Crouch will be one of my probably my best pay up option is Crouch, and then Tom Green. And then from there, I really like Jay Gresham, whether I'm going to play him in my forward line or the midfield, Cornelio, and Cal Ward as a bit of a point of difference. His role can be really, really tricky to predict, Callum Ward. He has stayed mainly in the midfield, but he can go back. Like I said previously with Perryman and Whitfield and these guys, predicting the way they're all going to line up is becoming a little bit of a challenge. The other guy who I'd like to mention is Tanner Bruin. Be really interesting to see how he goes. When I first saw his draft highlight package, he's like a second Toby Green. Like, he really will become a very, very similar player to Green. Now, whether they play, I think they have to play him on the half-forward line just because of the way their team structures up this week. But he's someone who I'm keen on, regardless of the game script. And the other the other 6K guys, Wangane Millera and Callahan, who's going to be a star, and Winhager. You can make a case for them to save some salary. And I think probably Wangane Millera will be the most popular of those plays.
I was just going to mention, when you were talking about Tanner, I've looked up the tools here on DFR, and he's had these last 4 rounds, his CBAs include 45%, 33, 35, and 41% CBAs last week. So wherever that goes, he's pretty much sharing with Ward. Ward had 48 last week. What does Toby Green do? Does Toby Green get some CBAs? This is tough. This is tough. Obviously, he's going to be popular due to his price. If you're playing that, your 4 premiums up top. But this mid-price madness, as he said, and we might see that in your team later on, that you might have to bite the bullet and go a little bit cheaper than what you like. Which brings me to the forwards. Now, also, we've got plenty of the stars up front: Taranto, Cornelio, Marshall, Gresham. They're all available in your forward line, so expect some ownership there. Key forwards in Tim Membry, Max King, and obviously your pocket rocket and Jack Higgins. So, will you be interested in these guys if you are looking for a St Kilda win?
Yeah, look, I am getting some feedback already from our dear friends about me doubting the Giants, but I will be going pretty heavy on those St Kilda forwards. Just a little bit about Toby Green. You mentioned him before, and it's a really good segue into the forward line. I think the Giants have to play him forward. I really think the way their team is this week, they need someone to kick goals. So I think that he starts in the half-forward line. If they're getting comprehensively beaten, then maybe he goes into the midfield. But I think they need a forward line kind of centered around him and Himmelberg. I'm not too worried about any of those guys that you mentioned losing CBAs to Toby Green. In terms of forward line, clearly you've got the 2 stud midfielders from the Giants there, and Cornelio and Taranto. Marshall, as you mentioned earlier, Smatho, he'll be popular as a dual position play. And then Gresham, I mentioned, someone I will be quite keen on. He's taking a few. What are Gresham's CBA numbers? Question without notice.
Gresham, 88% last week.
Yeah.
It's been building. Started 52 at the start of the year, 67, 71, 68, and then last round, 88%.
Yeah, so Gresham's someone who, obviously, with his goal-scoring ability, he's kicked 6 goals in the last 2 weeks, and then CBA share is really high, so that's someone I'm keen on. And I really don't even mind a key forward stack here with Membry and Maxi King. King had a down week last week, still had 5 shots on goal, but just was a little bit wayward and kind of went out of it in the second half of the match, but he was matched up on one of my favourite unsung key defenders in Sam Collins, who's a bloody good defender. is a mountain of a man. Like as big as Max King is, Sam Collins is also just a really solid mountain of a defender. So Membry and King, don't mind that combo. Higgins, God, he's someone who I really don't like, but his upside is massive, as we know. He's kicked 4 and 5 goals this year. And from here on in, it becomes a little bit more muddled for me. I mentioned Tanner Bruin already. Dan Butler, yeah, not so much. Mason Wood is always a good GPP play, but not much confidence in Mason. But he's definitely someone who can win you a ticket or a whole lot of cash if he does happen to go off.
Let's talk about obviously key forwards for the Giants. Now, these guys are probably not going to be highly owned. Players such as like Harry Himmelberg hasn't cracked 65 since the first round. Bobby Hill, he's at 7,170 with an average of 50.8 on the season. These guys are cheap enough to get those premium midfielders in, and Contrarian as well, but you don't seem to have the shared sentiment. You rather be on the Saints players than the Giants here.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, if you want, I'm interested. Something that as a low stakes player, something that I often get wrong, I'll be honest, is my ownership predictions. I sometimes think that players who I think are really good sneaky plays end up being really popular. So I think that just comes from I just don't play the volume, and I mean I don't keep spreadsheets. I'm not that kind of analytical kind of player in that way. But I would have thought that you can get unique enough in your lineups without having to play those kind of plays. And again, it's like we said last week, Smatho. I think that hashtag play the best plays. Sometimes you just got to back yourself in and don't try and be too clever. Just pick teams you think can win the slate.
All right. Let's have a look at your hashtag play the best plays team for this round for the Giants and the Saints. I pretty much know who you're going to pick for the ruck. So that's Mr. BP. There we go. He goes straight in as your ruckman. Who are your defenders, mate?
Yeah, look, I've shared this team with some mates and copped a bit of flack for it, but I'm going to stick with my guns, Smatho. I'm going to stick with my guns in this one, okay? I'm going to lock in Josh Battle and Brad Hill to my back line. I'm going to get away from the Giants defenders. Might cop a bit of grief on Twitter for this one, but I'm just going to go with my judgment on this.
No, okay. So Battle and Hill are in for a little mini Saints correlation. As for your midfielders, not many premiums, I don't think. You've already spent some cash already.
Yeah, I have. So I'm going to lock in Wanganeen Millera as my cheapie, but I'm going to put him in the midfield, please.
Yeah, okay. There he is.
Yep. And then I'll lock in Ross, Gresham, and my little point of difference will be Cal Ward.
12,610.
Yep.
There we go. And then for your forwards, we have 23,000 in the kitty left.
Give me that beautiful double key defender stack. Actually, no, I'm gonna go a bit fancy. No, I'll change it up. I won't go the double key defender. I'm gonna go with Membry to keep my ownership down. And does that leave me enough cash to fit in Jack Higgins? Yes, it does.
Yes, it does.
Yep. Cool. Let's
so
do that.
Those on the podcast, Roody's team here. So from the forward line, Tim Membry, Jack Higgins, Nice, Wanganeen, Millera, I think that's his name, Gresham, Ross, Callum Waters, he mids, Josh Battle, Bradley Hill, Braden Pruce. Look at that. 8 players out of 9, all over $11,000 with a little cheapie just to get it all in. As you said, it's mid-price madness week here on the Draftstars AFL show.
And can I just say, listeners, never before have I played in a GWS single slate with less GWS players than I've picked tonight. So this could be, Smatho, maybe the last YouTube show that I do. I could be laughed off the show with this team. But like I said, sometimes you just got to go with your gut. Obviously, I actually played a kind of a similar looking team. Can't remember which slate it was. It was one of the singles last week. And the big mistake I made was playing the defenders from the team that I thought was going to win, and the ball just simply did not go down the back line enough. So you could play a version of the team that we just shared with you, but switch in Cumming and maybe even Lockie Ash, and you might get that exposure to the ball that team that we just gave you may not provide.
Excellent. Well, Rudy, thank you very much for your insights for Friday night footy, the Giants and the Saints, with a $90,000 prize pool, thanks to Draftstars. We'll be back, I'll see next week for round 7 action. A full lobby of contests available all the way up to Anzac Day for your Draftstars AFL needs. If you need any tips or guidance, make sure you get the dailyfantasyrankings.com.au and also get on the Draftstars, Australia's #1 daily fantasy platform. Thank you very much for listening or viewing our show tonight. We'll catch you next week. Thank you very much, Rudy.
Thank you, Smatho. See you next week.
See you next week on the Draftstars AFL show. See you then.